King Lear's actions at the beginning of the play show a narcissistic man, deceived by appearances, trying to retain his sense of self by striving to keep his title of king, but rid himself of all the duties and responsibilities. His plan contravenes the natural order, and Cordelia, his most cherished daughter, chooses truth over loyalty, refusing to go along with him. Lear vindictively banishes her, leaving his own two daughters to strip him of his power and dignity. The play's theme is not what happens to Lear, but within Lear himself. As he struggles to adjust to his new insignificance, his kingdom moves from an ordered realm into social and political chaos, and his mind becomes binded by hate, resentment, and desire for revenge. Obsessed with self pity, he descends into madness. During Lear's inner struggle to accept that he is just a man, he starts to recognize his failures as a ruler that, like him, many of his kingdoms are suffering great injustices. At this point, at the center of the play, he comes across Edgar, who has assumed the fiend mad character of Poor Tom. Poor Tom, the personification of political and social chaos, who highlights not only Lear's heightened mental instability, but allows Lear to explore the humanistic questions of man's identity, the concept of justice, and come to know himself better. Throughout the play, Lear struggles to accept his loss of power and dignity, and it is explored through the theme of madness, both through the fiend madness of Poor Tom and through the real madness of King Lear. The Significance of Fiend Madness by me, Dylan Reisky. Edgar, fleeing from his father, believes that he must disguise himself as a madman to survive and become a character well known to the Elizabethan era, the Bedlam Beggar. Wretched souls who wander the streets naked, engaging in self-mutilation with rolling eyes, referring to themselves as Poor Tom. Poor Tom defines the center of the play at the height of Lear's madness. He represents the disruption of the natural order, the personification of political and social chaos with filthy appearances, nakedness, and madness. In addition to being synonymous with chaos, the role of Poor Tom enables Lear to explore the human condition and the meaning of justice. And it is during this journey of exploration that he starts to come to terms with the lack of significance and the worth of humanity. On the heath, we see Lear angry, full of resentment, longing for revenge and struggling with his reduction in power and dignity. On the brink of madness, he sees people living in poverty, and like him, they are suffering a great injustice. Oh, I have taken too little care of this, recognizing that he has failed as a ruler. It is here that Poor Tom suddenly appears, babbling nonsense, and Lear asks, "Did thou give all to thy two daughters? And art thou come to this?" Seeming unable to separate himself from the identity of Poor Tom. Telling Tom that he would be better off dead, Lear asks, "Is man no more than this? Thou art the thing itself?" Unaccommodated man is no more but such a poor, bare, forked animal as thou art. Off, off, you lendings. Tom is a symbol of utter deprivation that Lear is going through, the thing itself, who is not provided for, the unaccommodated man. Shakespeare is asking, do we need to strip away all the trappings and conventions of humanity that makes us different from animals to get at the nature of man? And if we do that, will we find him different to animals? Because if we are just animals pursuing our self-interest, how can the political and social chaos resolve itself? Lear then starts to get undressed, evidence of further insanity, reducing him to the minimum necessities of existence to further his understanding of common humanity. Shakespeare has already given us the answer to Lear's question. As we know, Tom is more than this. He is Edgar, nobility, Duke of Gloucester, so Lear's mistaken Tom is not the thing itself. In fact, Lear also knows that Tom is more than this when he refers to him, perhaps in a state of delusion, as a philosopher and a learned Theban. Lear trying to understand justice, he asks Tom, "What is the cause of thunder?" He wants to know are evildoers struck down by vengeful gods. To explore justice further, he orchestrates the lunatic trial of Goneril and Regan, composed of a man losing his mind, a fool, and a bedlam beggar. It is a complete mockery of the justice system. Let them anatomize Regan. See what breeds about her heart. Is there any cause in nature that makes these hard hearts? Lear realizes what justice should be, that it should be based on who the person really is at their core, and not how they appear. He did not see this at the beginning of the play, when he banishes Cordelia, and is still blind in his own involvement in the cause of Regan's hard heart. However, justice in King Lear makes no accommodation for mercy. Both the good and the bad suffer alike. Everyone faces hard consequences. The question of whether man is no more than this and an aspiration of justice are prominent themes of both Tom Wolfe's Bonfire of the Vanities and film adaptation of lawyer Brian Stevenson's biography, Just Mercy. The Bonfire of the Vanities follows the demise of Sherman McCoy, a wealthy narcissist cut off from all but a small section of society that has little understanding of common humanity. One night, Sherman and his mistress, Maria Ruskin, take a wrong turn on the highway and end up in the Bronx where they are involved, Maria behind the wheel, in a hit and run. Sherman is then dragged through the legal system and as the great white defendant to prove that justice is blind. As in King Lear, justice itself appears to be harsh, showing no mercy. In Bonfire of the Vanities, it is a political tool, unconcerned about the nature of humanity. Maria goes unpunished. The victim of the hit and run dies. The morally upstanding judge loses his job. The sleazy reporter wins a Pulitzer Prize, and the citizens of Harlem suffer the substandard legal representation, hospitals, and schools. Like Edgar, I nothing am. Sherman has a sense of nothingness abruptly thrust upon him, and is stripped of all that defines him, reducing to an abject creature. No longer identifying as himself, a bond trader, a father, a son, at the feet of his incarcerators. Unlike poor Tom, who is shown to be more than he appears, Wolfe shows the man is nothing more than the trappings and conventions of humanity. And while the radical individualism flourishes in Bonfire of the Vanities, King Lear returns to the world of order. In Just Mercy, Stevenson fights for the rights of those convicted, either wrongly or without adequate legal representation in the Deep South. It focuses on a true story of Walter McMillan, who is accused of murdering a white woman and is convicted and sentenced to death, in a trial that only lasted 2 days, despite having an alibi. His conviction is based on the testimony of a convicted offender in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge overruled the jury's life sentence verdict for the death penalty, making a mockery of the legal system. In years that follow, Stevenson tirelessly fights to save McMillan's life, encountering racism, bigotry, and political barriers. As in King Lear, the punishment of Stevenson's clients is severe and most often disproportionate to the crime. The role of the learned Theban Stevenson is to enable society to see better than each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. Well, we all share a common humanity and deserve justice with mercy. After 6 years on death row and countless trials, Walter walks free. At the conclusion of the film, Stevenson states, "The true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned." Lear comes to understand this through the character of poor Tom. In addition to highlighting Lear's madness, the fiend madness of poor Tom is significant in enabling Lear to gain an understanding of the human condition, to come to know himself, and to acknowledge the worth of humanity in the most vulnerable, thus helping Lear come to terms with his loss of power and dignity. Edgar also learns from poor Tom to look beyond his own situation, feeling pity for Lear, bless your 5 wits, and trying to make Gloucester's pain light and portable, coming to understand that human compassion is needed for justice, thus ensuring he will be every inch a king.
King Lear's loss of dignity and how it contributed to his madness. Many characters in the play have symptoms of madness, whether faked or not, such as Edgar's disguise, poor Tom. However, no madness is as severe and real as King Lear's. King Lear shows a descent into madness over the play due to many factors, like his loss of power. Losing his pride in himself as a king causes his madness to descend even further, as he begins to self-sabotage his own worth. This loss of dignity is one of the 2 main reasons for King Lear's development into a madman, and shows why dignity is a prime component of the play. There are 2 essential instances which display Lear's loss of dignity and how it contributes to his madness. These are the forced decrease of troops in his train and the imaginary court assembly to convict his daughters. These 2 events individually contribute to the evidence of his deteriorating dignity and the madness caused by it. In Act 2, Scene 2, King Lear is rejected by his daughter Goneril and forced to go to Regan's castle to house him. He then is forced rather than asked to reduce his train to fewer numbers to fit inside the castle. However, the daughters use this as a way to reduce his power and eventually permitting him no knights with him besides one. The impact of this is far greater than just having less protection though. When King Lear took place, the magnitude of the train the king traveled in was a symbol for pride and displayed a nation and kingdom's power. In addition, it displayed pride and dignity of the king himself. Through this process of reducing the knights Lear had, the daughters were destroying his image and role as a king. This damages Lear's dignity, and he communicates that very obviously in his speech with his two daughters. And there are two quotes that are very crucial. The first is, "Man's life is cheap as beast." And the second is, "No, I'll not weep. I have full cause of weeping. But this heart shall break into 1,000 flaws, or I'll weep. O fool, I shall go mad." This speech communicates just how much his dignity has been hurt and his own view of himself as a king. He views this situation like his daughters are reducing the value to his life of a beast. Then at the end of it, declaring that he will go mad, purely due to his daughter's actions and how they take away his dignity as a king. This first recognizable representation of Lear losing his dignity gives the reader a better lens on the reason for his madness and contributes to his irrationality even more, seeing as after this he goes into a raging storm. He started with so much power and pride, only to be stripped of it piece by piece by the people he loved most. This makes it no surprise just how much further this propelled him into madness. There's also great symbolism in this, as the knights act as a representation of his dignity being stripped away slowly, and then being lashed off finally and reduced to nothing but himself with no title. This is one of the most influential moments in the play, not only because it caused the next events to occur while allowing his madness to freely take over, but because it was the moment his identity as a king was forcefully revoked. Some scenes after this, we are introduced to Lear again when he is in the midst of a storm with the Fool, Gloucester, Kent, and Edgar. They have just come to shelter, and Lear is still mad at Regan and Goneril. He cannot stand how they have betrayed him, and so he imagines putting them in court and apprehending them. The significance of this is that it shows that he is so deep in madness, he cannot bear reality anymore, and must set things right in his imagination. This being the only place where he still thinks he is a king, as shown when he's asked by the Fool, "Prithee, nuncle, tell me whether a madman be a gentleman or a yeoman," in which Lear responds and says, a king. This is also when Lear admits to being a madman, as saying a madman is king. Madman is a king. This is the point where the reader can understand just how much of Lear's loss of dignity has affected his mental state. He has lost enough pride to call himself mad and unworthy of honor or respect, as men were treated in those times. Nobody would call themselves mentally ill unless they would have lost all type of self-respect, and that is exactly what Lear is conveying here. In addition, Lear before would never hallucinate things such as this, but now he does not have enough dignity to confront his problems, so I imagine a scenario where he wins. In conclusion, this scene shows just how much Lear has lost contact with reality and turned into a madman due to his dignity being destroyed. A great literary connection, which has been the common theme of characters losing their dignity to become mad, is Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is a novel which is about a father who loses a son and has to go against his dignity and bring his son back to life. Louis Creed is the father's name, and the son is Gage Creed. Throughout the book, Louis has always followed the rule that nobody should go into the pet cemetery, and he was taught that it was the devil's work. However, once his son dies, he has to object his dignity and go against his critical thinking and bring him back to life. This is similar to King Lear, as Lear becomes insane to his deteriorating dignity, just as Louis Creed loses his dignity in order to become mad and revive his son. Both literary pieces contain events which destroy a character's dignity, leading to each person's madness causing them to do something. For this reason, King Lear and Louis Gage both have the sense of the madness due to loss of dignity. The loss of dignity that occurs in King Lear is a large contribution to Lear's madness. Having his dignity torn apart by his two betraying daughters is what launches him to madness, as well as the imaginary court meeting being evidence of just how much his total loss of dignity affects him. Affects his mental state as he starts hallucinating. Overall, the impact that his dignity has on him is huge, a huge aspect of his madness, and is a primary reason he becomes mad over the course of the play. The end.
One way it is evident Lear's inner struggle to accept his loss of power and dignity is dramatized throughout the play using the theme of madness. This can be seen through real madness with loss of power. This loss of power is exemplified in the novel through his disordered clothing, emotional behavior, unintelligence, and anger demonstrated to other characters. Lear at the beginning of the novel gives up his kingdom and divides it equally among his three daughters, Cordelia, Goneril, and Regan, but from his perspective still keeps authoritarian power and the ability to rule over other people. This is lost when he loses his land at the hands of Goneril and Regan and forces Cordelia out of the kingdom. Through these three examples, Lear slowly loses his power on the stem of madness. One way it is shown as to how Lear struggles to accept his loss of power through madness is with the numerous appearances of him in disordered clothing throughout the novel. We are first introduced to Lear's appearance of disordered clothing in Act 2, Scene 4, where Lear originally asks Goneril for shelter, but Goneril rejects Lear instead. Lear, along with his 100 knights, attempt to travel towards Regan's castle to see if she will be willing to take him in for shelter. However, she, like her sister Goneril, rejects Lear's requests. In addition, she treats Lear's servant Kent, who is disguised poorly, by placing Kent in the stocks. Lear eventually comes to beg Regan to reconsider, however Regan does not change her mind. While Lear is begging, he is not wearing the king's crown and his old gray hair is showing. And this moment symbolizes how Lear has lost all authoritarian power even over his own daughters. His ability to rule is gone. It also symbolizes how his lessened position in life now, someone who is unwilling to take care of his physical appearance, which mirrors his weakened position and status in life despite technically being a king. Throughout Act 3, the readers are also witnessed to seeing Lear in the middle of a strong storm, wet, dirty, and exhausted at the effect of the storm's elements, such as wind and rain. Lear, who during the storm is dressed in his monarchical attire, expensive garments normally to what a king would wear, took off his clothing by his own will and decided to join poor Tom, who is Edgar in disguise, and going through the storm with limited clothing on. This is the peak of Lear's madness, and it coincides with his descent towards the lower levels of the hierarchical system in the kingdom, with Lear wearing minimal clothing and finding himself homeless beside poor Tom. This marks the journey of Lear's madness translating into a complete loss of power. Another way it can be shown how Lear struggles to accept his loss of power through madness is through the anger he demonstrates in speaking. We are first introduced to Lear and his personality early on within the play. And it is easy to notice that Lear is a hot-headed man who is always showing a level of anger and upsetness, regardless of whatever environment he is in. His emotion of anger is a contributing factor in driving his madness and the related loss of authoritarian power in the play. But one great example which shows Lear losing power because of his madness is his clash with his own daughter Goneril in Act 1, Scene 4. As mentioned previously, Lear insists on traveling with 100 knights to stay at Goneril's palace. Goneril is willing to accommodate Lear under the condition that he reduces the number of knights he's traveling with, thus prompting Goneril to let neither Lear nor his knights into the castle. In the same scene, Lear calls Goneril some horrible things which influenced their relationship in a detrimental way. Lear let his anger get the best of him in this situation. Although unrelated to Lear directly, The Earl of Gloucester also lets anger get to the best of him when Edmund shows him a forged letter which has written on it that Edgar wishes he had control of his father's wealth. While different examples, it does show, though, how characters getting easily angered and overreacting can result in a loss of power. Being angry at the actions of others can actually result in those people acquiring power and control over you, which is not the intended outcome. It is most notably seen with Goneril and Regan in this play using Lear's anger against him. The anger in Lear's speech is similar to that of Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter. Both characters have similarities, the main one being that they lose their power at their hands, in part as a result of their madness. Both of these characters experience madness because of their anger. In Harry Potter, Lord Voldemort is keen on getting revenge from Harry and seeks to end his life, while seeking total control of Hogwarts in the wizarding world. Voldemort, who however is blinded by his ambition and anger towards Harry, who was all along destroying Voldemort's Horcruxes, items which have been a part of Voldemort's soul and life in making him invincible. Harry, however, manages to destroy all of them despite the immense difficulty of being able to reach all of them, and finally kills Voldemort in a final confrontation near the end of the novel. Harry Potter used the anger and ambition of Voldemort to his advantage to help find his own daughters, Goneril and Regan, to help find the Horcruxes of Voldemort himself. There's a parallel in King Lear with his own daughters, Goneril and Regan, take advantage of Lear and use his anger against him and to their advantage by controlling him and stripping away his authoritarian power. Lastly, another demonstration of how Lear struggles to accept his loss of power through madness is through his ignorance or lack of intelligence in making decisions. This interplays negatively with Lear's anger, as Lear is unable to make rational and good decisions and instead acts irresponsibly when angry. This contributes to Lear's poor decision-making. An excellent example of this is in the opening scene where Lear banishes Cordelia from the kingdom and decides to leave the rest of the land to Goneril and Regan instead. Lear is angered by Cordelia's reluctance to express love to him while being fooled by his other two daughters who express love but are insincere. Lear ends up rewarding the two insincere daughters over the two more principled ones, going from dividing up the land between 3 people to now 2 people, who are corrupt and evil. Is not a good decision, as you are leaving more power and authority for those less deserving daughters. Lear also banishes Kent, who defends Cordelia, despite Kent being his loyal and most trusted advisor. The result of Lear's anger and unintelligence is counterproductive, as he rewards his 2 cruel daughters and punishes his 2 most loyal and devout supporters, which are Kent and Cordelia. This is what stems from his madness, as there is no one left who has true allegiance. It marks the beginning of Lear's loss of authoritarian power and his ability to rule over other people. The unintelligence of Lear can also be connected to Star Wars: The Last Jedi and the character Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine, who is the leader of the dark side and its army which are looking to take over the galaxy, is looking to confront Luke Skywalker, who is the last Jedi left, and kill him off once and for all. Darth Vader, who is Luke Skywalker's father, once a Jedi but now turned and working on behalf of Palpatine, is the one who was ordered to kill Luke Skywalker in front of him by Palpatine. Luke, however, turned his father back to the good side, and his father, while dying in the process, killed Palpatine to finally restore balance back to the galaxy and restore peace. Palpatine was unaware that Vader and Luke still had a father-son connection and could still work together. This lack of awareness or intelligence by Palpatine can also be compared to the unintelligence from King Lear and how Lear decides to banish his most loved and loyal advisors in the opening scene of the play.
Madness, whether fiend or real, dramatizes Lear's struggle within himself to come to terms with his loss in power and dignity, gaining insight into humanity and journeying from pride and power to love and humility. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation. Have a great March break.